Welcome back, everybody, to the Thriving Street Podcast, mastering the art of thriving at life, where we talk about creating change in our lives and in the world around us. This is your host, JJ. This is my other host, Gigi. Say hi, Gigi.
Hi.
And we are in season 2, and it took me like 5 tries to get that intro right today because it's been a few weeks. Welcome back, everybody. Just to remind you guys, if you didn't catch the end of the season 1, we are going to be talking more about the programming and programming when it comes to your own training, but also programming within gyms, specifically CrossFit style programming where we're doing classes. And we're also going to be busting some fitness myths. So things that still kind of prevail in our society, and that people have, things that the normal people outside of our gyms believe, or maybe you believe about your training. And we're going to decide if it's true or not. So for today's podcast, we're going to talk about workouts themselves. Specifically, what are the red flags that you're going to do a bad workout, or you're creating a bad workout, or you found a workout online that you maybe want to try, or your friends trying to recruit you to do in open gym or whatever. And what are some of the things you need to look out for when it comes to bad workouts? And then we're also going to bust the myth: lifting weights makes you bulky, right? And so that's a little bit more specific to women. Most men, don't mind adding a little bit of muscle. That tends to be a goal, but we're going to talk about that as well. So, Gigi, what is the worst workout you've ever done or created?
Oh, wow. That's a hell of a question.
Or just a combination of movements. It doesn't have to be the workout specifically.
Kettlebells and deadlifts, kettlebell swings and deadlifts is like the hands down the worst combination. And it seems like, oh, this is so great. Like they complement each other because they're both a swing, and then you do it and you're like, I can't move my back.
Yeah.
Like it's way, way too much. I think we did a workout once that was kettlebells, deadlifts, and sit-ups. And it was just like, it was all wrong. It was all wrong in so many ways. And then we literally made it a rule that you can't combine kettlebell swings and deadlifts in a workout ever. Even like back-to-back days is like a lot. Like that's
Yeah. I mean, and let's preface this with, there's always going to be certain scenarios where like these combinations might make sense, So what we're talking about today is, in general, what are the problems that we're going to look out for? So specifically, I remember like one workout that is fairly common in CrossFit was CrossFit.com posted it many years ago, and it's 400 meters of walking lunges, and which seems like, oh, that's kind of a cool challenge, right? Like this is a cool test of fitness, and or extreme test, I guess. And yeah, no, people can't walk for like 5 days after that. It is horrible. And what's really going on is it's one movement. So lunges tend to cause a lot of soreness anyway, because you're really controlled on the eccentric, the lowering, and that eccentric movement always causes a lot of delayed onset muscle soreness. And so people are controlled because they don't want to bang their knee, especially because you're doing this outside usually on the pavement or whatever. And so people end up being way more sore. And it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's dumb, right? Like if you want to do that style, do like 8 minutes max distance, like it, because what you do that workout, first of all, that'd be a horrible workout to put into a gym. Come in today, we're going to do 400 meters of walking lunges. Like that's it, like what else are we going to do that day? But, and then some people might finish in 8 or 10 minutes, and other people are going to take 20 minutes, but everybody's going to be extremely sore. And it's like, so what's the point? And I think that's actually a kind of an overreaching thing to talk about when it comes to workouts, is what's the point? Like, what are you trying to do here? I think the thing is about CrossFit is specifically is it's a little bit of a test, because we're measuring things, and but we're also trying to get people fitter and healthier. And I think people get kind of confused between the two, like doing 30 muscle ups for time, which is another CrossFit.com kind of benchmark, is a test. That's not doing 30 muscle ups for time afterward. You're going to be, or even a scaled version, you're going to be fitter than not exercising. But could you have spent that time doing something better for your body and, a better investment of your energy and time than doing 30 muscle ups? And so I think that's kind of what is the intent that day. So when you're deciding and you're going to go do a workout that you found online, or your friend is doing, or you're visiting a gym out of town, like you're traveling and you go to a gym and you see the workout, you got to remember, okay, what are my goals and what's the intent of this workout? So, they may have some crazy thing programmed, and it's not that you should judge their whole program based on this one day. That's one thing to point out, is that you can't judge a program on one workout. So, but there's a good chance that if there's some crazy workout, they might be testing some specific things or preparing for the open or whatever. And so that's one thing you want to remember is, okay, what are my goals here today, and how am I going to modify this? And if you've been doing this for a few years or more, you know your capabilities, and you got to be smart about what you're going to do. You're not there to impress people. You're not there to you're with your friend or whatever in the gym, and they have some crazy workout that they're doing. You got to decide, like, is this really going to make me fitter? Is this really going to be good for me? Or is this just sort of am I doing a stunt, or am I testing myself to do some crazy thing just because it looks fun? And it's okay to do a fun workout like that, but just keep that in mind so you don't end up hurting yourselves. So yeah, deadlifts and kettlebell swings, especially back to back in a workout, is going to be is not good. Another one that I see a lot is they'll do a lift, and then they'll do like a 15 or 20-minute Metcon afterward. And the problem, now that's fine if you're training on your own and you have lots of time and rest between and everything. But when it comes to classes, when you have that much stuff in an hour, it takes 20 minutes or more to lift, and you got to warm up and you got to set up for the Metcon. There's no coaching going on, like you can't. So it really can't fit it all in the hour very effectively. And it's just, for most people, that tends to be overkill, right? You have to build up to that volume over time. And really the benefit from these workouts is the first 10 minutes, right? Once you start going past the 10-minute mark, especially after lifting heavy, you're not really doing that much benefit. You're not really benefiting your fitness level very much. And so you're better off, doing a lift and then maybe some skill work, and then, or I like to do skill work and a lift, and then a short Metcon where we get that intense level and train those metabolic pathways, and then calling it before the form breaks down, before you start risking injury or overtraining or whatever, and call it that day. So keep that in mind when you're doing a workout, or you're doing some other programming. Like, how much stuff am I trying to fit into this training session?
Yeah, you can't max out all the time. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm going to preface this by saying, yes, they do this in the games, but it's different if you're an athlete and you're doing it, because the goal of an athlete is to basically put their body in harm's way to achieve greatness, right? Most people are not trying to do that day to day, right? If I got injured in the gym and I'm trying to like make dinner for my 3 kids, like, I'm fucked, right? And there's no glory there. So one of my biggest pet peeves in a workout is maxes for time. So when they do, like, you have 8 minutes to get your max snatch, or you've got 12 minutes to do your max back squat. It's just like, that is just a fucking injury waiting to happen.
Or do a workout and then immediately after
your max is after, right?
Like, max, yeah. Oh, yeah. And all these people PR'd or do muscle ups or whatever. And it's like, no, that is a test of your capacity. And it's really for experienced people to not hurt themselves. And if people are maxing out after a Metcon, it could be usually two things. Usually it's they didn't have a recent max. So whatever max they had in their head isn't their current max. Or sometimes they're getting in their own head about it, right? So like they're like, maybe for whatever lift or the muscle up or whatever, they're psyching themselves out when they try it, and then they do a workout and they're so tired they can't think about it, so then they achieve that. Again, what is the training benefit? If you do that lift, for example, you are not going to be stronger. Like you're not going to send the signal to your body to get stronger from that. It's really just a test, and you just said, I love that was so eloquently put. Nicely done, Gigi. People are putting themselves in harm's way to test greatness. And that's the biggest thing in competitions, especially, the open and the games. The whole idea is they're creating these challenges, and they're looking for people to fail, right? Like, that's the whole point, is who's left at the end of this competition, who is able to consistently perform these challenges better than their peers. And that's not training. The phrase I like to use is that getting injured is the opposite of being healthy. Right. And it's the same thing when like getting hurt in the gym is ridiculous. And the most common thing that we see in CrossFit is torn hands. And it's like, okay, so again, we're looking at a workout. What's the biggest red flag? When you first look at a workout, obviously it's the number of reps of each movement. So when you first look at a workout, if it's something like wall balls or double unders or something like that, and it says 50 reps, like, okay, there's that's not unreasonable. But if it's 50 deadlifts or 30 deadlifts in a workout, it's like, whoa. Slow down there, speed racer. What's going on here? Like, why would you, what is the point? What is the training benefit of that? Now, okay, maybe it's 115, for men, that's not crazy, 115 pounds, but 225 or 245 for 30 reps, like that's just a recipe for injury, right? Or if you have a good gym and everybody, if you program that in your own gym and you've got great coaches and everybody in the gym knows their abilities, yeah, they could pace that out and everything, and be somewhat safe. But their intensity is going to go way down because they're going to have to go so slow that they don't hurt themselves. And so it's like, okay, so what's the point of the workout? What energy pathway are we doing? So again, it's not saying that you can't ever do that, but it's a red flag. Like, whoa, this is going to be intense. Another one is like 30 pull-ups, 30 toes to bar. Anything over 15 when it comes to pull-ups and toes to bar in a conditioning style workout is gonna shred people's hands, right? And again, you don't think about it, but I've gotten blood poisoning I got doing 30 muscle ups per time, 12, 14 years ago. I actually, from the false grip, I actually tore my part of my wrist, and I ended up with blood poisoning. And I think we talked about that in the last podcast, and one of my injuries from CrossFit. And you think about that in the gym, people are tearing their hands. That's an open wound. And then now with like staph infections, especially like the MRSA staph, like, you do not want open wounds in your gym, and there's no point. You're not winning any money. There's no medals. There's no podium.
Right, exactly. And it's like, so is it pride? Is it ego? Is it just the competitive nature that we're trying to achieve? But like I get it. Like I'll be the first to say that I've gotten an open wound playing recreational soccer. You know what I mean? like it happens. But that's the nature of sport versus the nature of training, right? And it's just like you've been saying this whole time, what are you trying to get out of it? When I'm playing a soccer game, I want to win. I'm not playing it because it's great cardio. I'm not playing because I'm building my foot-eye coordination or whatever. I'm playing because I want to play a game that I want to win. It's the same reason you play cards or you play fucking dice or whatever. Like, you just want to win. That's not why you do fitness training, right? And if you're going to be an athlete and you're going to follow the sport, then that's a different story. But that's maybe 1% of the people that are in these CrossFit gyms are like going to get to that point, you know what I mean, where they are participating in the sport itself. But even when you're training for sport, you shouldn't get injured on the way, right? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea is if you're breaking people in practice, you're not going to win on game day because everyone's hurt, right? Yeah, so big. Anytime you see big sets of movements, that's always a red flag. Specifically, movements that are going to shred your hands, or even just high volumes of squats or pulling, like deadlifts. It just tends to blow the back up. And then the other thing, we'll mention the deadlifts and the kettlebell swings, is when movements are interfering with each other. So when you see movements, especially when they're back to back. Now, if it's a workout that has 10 movements and they're spread out, that's different. But if you see things like another combination is like double unders and running, or double unders running and box jumps. The reason why there's been a lot of people that have ruptured their Achilles or had heel cord injuries in CrossFit was because, maybe not on the same day, but even on back-to-back days. I definitely made this mistake 10 plus years ago where, I didn't have anybody, catastrophically ruin their leg, but people had some tweaks. And so I went back and looked at my programming, and you guys who are programmers, you need to do this, is if everyone in the gym is talking about how their shoulders are messed up, or you get like some feedback that like, oh yeah, a couple people are talking about their shoulders hurt, you need to go back and look at your programming and say like, what did I do? So that you're learning and adapting. Well, I had programmed running, box jumps, and double unders like in 3 days in a row. And the people that came on those 3 days, there was a higher chance of them having some tweak. And so I realized, okay, that I'll always avoid programming those 3 days in a row. Now it helps if you're doing jump up, step downs. That kind of removes that, but you don't think about it. But like burpees over the bar, is also a jumping and landing thing. So you're using your heel cords, obviously box jumps, double unders, running. And you don't really like jumping pull-ups is another one. When people are doing jumping pull-ups, that's all, Achilles. And so you have to think about the movements. So when you look at a workout, you want to think about, okay, like, are they the same movement pattern? Is it a squat and a squat and a squat, right? I'll give another example where I gave someone rhabdo. So years ago, and it's 2009, and I went to the affiliate gathering. So this is a group where they brought thousands of gym owners together, and so I was out of town, and we went to the park and did a park workout with like hundreds of people. It was really cool. But they had a park workout that was, I believe it was 5 medicine ball squat cleans, 7 burpees, and then 10 overhead squats with a PVC pipe for 10-minute AMRAP, right? So it seems very, very benign, right? And at first glance. And then you go, okay, well, the medicine ball squat clean is 2 squats. So you squat down to the ball, and then you squat to stand up with it. So that was 10 squats. The burpee is kind of squattish, right? Like there's some squatting going on there. And then overhead squats for 10. So there's another 10 reps. Well, I thought it was a pretty interesting workout. So I programmed it on our Sunday for the new people. So the people trying out, we had to come in and try out.
Oh my God. That's terrible.
And we had a guy, Brian, we started calling him Brabdo later on, because he ended up signing up at the gym, and then he went and opened the first gym in Indonesia later on.
Brian, like Brian. Yeah.
Brian, yeah, Brian. And he was somewhat fit because he'd been doing martial arts, and they said, he was like, you said go as many rounds as possible. So I did. And he got like 7 rounds or something like that. So he did like 300 squats or whatever, and couldn't walk and had to go to the hospital, and they admitted him, and it was full on case of rhabdo, and he was in the hospital for like 7 days. But again, it was because those movements were the same movement, right? Especially with a lot of eccentric movement, right? So it made him, tore up the muscles from the eccentric loading. And so when you're looking at a workout, you want to look at okay, is this stuff going to, interfere with it? Then the other thing is obviously the total volume or duration, so if they don't give a guide on where you're supposed to be, like as you guys know with Thrivistry, we always say like it should be between, 15 and 22 minutes, or it should be 20 to 28 minutes or whatever. That helps everyone decide, okay, what's the proper scaling so I get the correct stimulus for this workout. Time caps are not they're a step in the right direction, better than no guidance whatsoever. But again, having a time cap, you might have people finish it in half that amount of time, and you have people who are not finishing. And I made this post on Instagram recently that was like, if you're having to stop people because of a time cap, you failed your job as a coach. And it was funny because people were like, what do you mean? Like, what, no, I disagree. And I was like, if you're coaching a class, right, and people are clearly failing, like, they're not going to finish on the time cap, you need to step in and adjust their workout so that they get the proper stimulus. They finish the 5 rounds, or you might drop the load or drop the number of reps or change the movement. It's like, okay, if it's like a benchmark or something like that, yeah, okay, maybe you let them go until the time cap. But ultimately, when someone gets time capped, they didn't scale properly. That was your first mistake. And then your second mistake is you didn't intervene as a coach, right? That's your job, is to walk around when people are doing this and make sure they're being safe and they're getting the proper stimulus. And so if you're doing a workout and there is a time cap, or you see the time cap, just remember that your whole idea is to select the movements and change the workout so that you finish under the time cap. So again,
I would say, like, that also has to do with what are you trying to accomplish as a coach, right? And I think I heard this in a gym yesterday, and I kind of said, do you have a scaling guide? And they said, no, because everyone's working on different things. And I thought that's a really interesting way to look at a class, right? Because in my mind, a class is used it's GPP, and it's designed to have everyone be brought through the same physiological change over the course of a month or 6 weeks or whatever your cycle might be, right? So
Mhm.
there are some days that are practice days, there are some days that are test days, there are some days that are mental toughness days, right? Like, but everyone in the class is trying to achieve the same thing that day. And as opposed to, so it's like that's like how to run a group class and get the most benefits out of that. It seemed to me that when she said that, I was like, what that kind of says to me is that you're not using class as like a group stimulus thing, which makes me think all kinds of weird thoughts, but we won't go there. Um, it's like, it's almost as if you're saying everyone's doing their own personal training. We all just happen to be doing it together, right? So there's no group coherence. There's no overarching
Programming.
strength.
There's
There's
not
no
programming.
Right. That's not programming. Exactly. All it is here's your individual design. Depending on what you're working on in any given day, on any given time, you're going to be doing any different thing than the person beside you. And I guess you could do it like that, but you lose the entire community sense and you lose control as a coach, right? Like you're not then really coaching. All you're doing is, I don't know,
Well, I
spinning.
mean, if you're, if you're doing a good job as a coach, you could be, teaching and making sure people are safe and like giving them coaching cues and, so there is some coaching going on, but like I said, they're not following a program. If everybody's kind of changing the workout, and this is one of my big things with Thrivistry is planning out the entire hour of a class or whatever, having and being very specific about the scaling options and the coaching tips, because even class to class, if your programming is if it's just the workout, if it's just this like 15-minute AMRAP or whatever, and the morning coach says like, okay, we want everyone to like go heavy on this, take your time, and you won't get as much cardio, but like use the heaviest load you can, and then before the workout they just sort of do a quick warm up and that's it. And then the evening coach is like, no, go light and get as many reps as you can, and then they practice snatches beforehand, and it's like those are two completely different experiences, and those people are not on the same program,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to give the guidance so that everyone's on the same page, and so that everyone's together and on the program. And obviously there's customization within that, but like I said, if you have somebody doing a workout where they got 2 rounds and they went a little heavier, and then everybody else, the other classes, they did 7 rounds because they went lighter, their bodies got different signals, and so they're not on the same program. And so it's kind of that point, when you're looking at a workout, that you want to do online, or your friend wants them to do with you, you got to remember, okay, looking at the workout, what's the intent of the workout, and what are my goals? Am I testing myself today? Is it just so there's nothing wrong with just doing something that just looks cool, like that looks like a cool, like, I don't know how I'll do on that. That looks crazy challenging or whatever. Like doing that every once in a while is not a bad thing. But again, you have to decide like, okay, is this making me better, or am I just seeing where I'm at? Am I just comparing where I'm currently at to this challenge? The problem is, if you do that every day, you're not making gains as fast as you could be, right? If you were actually doing programming that was actually getting you towards your goals. And so I think that's an important point, is you always want to make sure that what are your goals and what's the intent of the workout. So we went over large sets of movements that are gonna challenge the same muscle groups and the same movement patterns, and then also when the total volume of the movement. So you got to do the math, and some people don't like to do the math, but when it says like 5 rounds of 30 whatever, it's like, oh, that's 150 things. Like, oof, that's a lot, 5 rounds of 30 wall ball. Like that's, if there's other things mixed in there, that's not crazy, but you got to remember that's 150 wall ball. You're going to be sore from that. If it's another movement, again, like something like deadlifts or whatever, like, okay, that's a red flag. And so when you see these red flags, ultimately, and what you're deciding it's a training day, not a testing day, and you're like, okay, so what do? Well, ultimately, you have the final say in what you're going to do. Don't let coaches or other people push you into doing things that are going to make you incredibly sore. You're going to risk injury. So you remember, you ultimately always have the say to scale it down, right? Obviously, if you think you're better than what the coach is saying, then that's a whole nother discussion. But in general, there's this rule that I like to teach people, and that is you can always do more afterward. right? So if you're doing a workout and you're not sure, or the coach is telling you, maybe you should go lighter or do a different movement, go ahead and do what their recommendation is. And then if you feel like, oh, I didn't get a good workout, or I could do more, then you can always do a little extra workout afterwards. So, a lot of our programming in Thrivistry, we have a cash out. So we have something you can do on your own after class if you want to do more. Or, if you're going to your gym or whatever, or you're visiting another gym and you do a workout and you're like, that wasn't that hard of a workout, but I got to go, I don't have time. You can always work out again tomorrow, right? But you can't go the other way. If you do something that is way too hard and you tear your hand and you're super sore, now your training is disrupted for the next few days, right? Maybe more.
Well, and I will say that's, we really only talked about analyzing an individual workout and what happened. But where that becomes so important is if, like, say the AM coach and the PM coach are not on the same page because they're not really on a program. The AM coach says, let's just fucking crush this. And everybody gets 10 rounds instead of the 5 rounds that the PM coach does. And then the next day is like max snatches. And you're fucked because you totally destroyed yourself the day before. And now you're not going to get a good testing day on the things that do matter, right? Like there are some times where you need to do testing and you need to know what your benchmarks are and stuff like that. And if you're not following a program, you're not going to get the most out of the program because it just doesn't exist, and you're not really doing anything at all.
Yeah. Well, I would say, like, it's better than not exercising at all, but
Is it?
And to kind of speak to the whole CrossFit thing, like, that's actually one of the things that made CrossFit so successful, was that even with, like, not really following a program, just showing up and doing these challenging, circuits for time, it works. It works so much better than going to the gym and doing some bodybuilding stuff and running on a treadmill. Like, it is so much more effective, and especially from a time standpoint, you can get results with a lot less time invested with these workouts. But that's where we start to, that's also part of the problem, is that people don't recognize that programming matters, and you can't just do random workouts and get and stay safe and get the best results you can get in the fastest amount of time possible, unless you're following a program. So I guess that would be, we'll end it on this part of the podcast on, think about that too, when you're getting roped into some random workout, or you're deciding you're not going you need a workout to do today. Think about that for a second. And if you're just sort of jumping around between different programs, you're not going to make gains as fast as you could as if you were following a dedicated program that had a plan, right? It's better than nothing, but ultimately, just make sure you know what you've done the last few days and what you're going to be doing the next few days, and you're not going to disrupt the program. So if you're following a gym's program, you're at a current gym and you're traveling, or you're doing a workout on your own, maybe look and see what they did that day and try to match what they did. The amount of time, the time domain, maybe some of the movement patterns, so that you're still moving forward with the group in the plan, and you're not off doing some random thing, right?
Yeah. If you're in a Mad Lab gym too, the coach will just give you stuff to do while you're away. And they should know what the programming is and make sure that you're not missing any of the goals that you guys have set up together, right? They can make sure to help you do what you got to do to stay on track there. I will say that following a program is the one thing that you should take from the sports, right? Like a swimmer is not just going to go in and practice and go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Like, athletes follow programs, and that's why they get the results that they do. And if you're going to take any aspect of the sport of fitness, that's the aspect you should take, not the competitive side.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the competitive programming is very deliberate with the progressions and the routines that you're following to adapt to that stimulus, right? So if you're doing just it for general health and fitness, like, following those routines and the progressions are going to get you the results faster and keep you safe. I think that's a big thing we want to talk about too, is just that, like, ultimately, like I said, getting hurt in the gym is the opposite of being healthy. And it's like, I don't know why people, the gamification, the measuring, and the competing sometimes motivates people to go hard, which is good, and keep you consistent and do those things outside of the gym. They're gonna make you better. But ultimately, if you start chasing that, like, I'm gonna win, then again, you end up hurting yourself, and there's no medals, there's no money. What are you doing this for? And ultimately, in my own personal life, and I think a lot of people who do Thrivistry, the real goal is like, how little can I exercise? Right? Like how little time can I work out and spend time in the gym and still get results and still be happy with my progress and how I look and feel and perform. And, it's not about like, oh, how much can I add, extra? Because ultimately when you figure out, and that's what Thrivistry is how can I spend the best hour of my time for the best investment in my health and everything. And those, now you can take that distilled, what are the most important things? And then now that you have that, you can expand it. If you have a goal, like you want to do a Tough Mudder or Spartan race, or you want to do, dabble in some powerlifting or whatever, yeah, you have that now because we've distilled down the most important stuff. But again, it's like, when you're looking at these workouts and you're going off the reservation and doing a workout that's not part of your program, just make sure you keep that stuff in mind. Just look out for those red flags, big sets of movements that are going to interfere with each other, and total volume and duration and relative, and all that stuff is relative to your goals. Are you testing today or are you training? All right, let's talk about this myth of lifting weights will make you bulky. And now, for those of you guys listening to this podcast, most of you are probably like, yeah, this is like, duh. Like everyone knows that lifting weights makes you huge. No, everyone knows that that's not true. And so for women especially, they're worried about adding too much muscle and looking like these like maybe the top women in the gym or the competitors and CrossFitters. Sometimes they have big shoulders, and that's something that they're worried about, and they're worried about putting on size. And let's just say right away, this is a myth that is completely false. It is very hard to put on muscle. If it was this easy, every man that goes in the gym would probably weigh 10 or 20 pounds more of muscle. Like every dude wouldn't mind having an extra 10 or 20 pounds of muscle. Like we all, like, we want that. We want to make it usable, but who wouldn't want to have, for guys, they want to have that size. And guys lift weights and they eat way more food and they naturally have more testosterone and growth hormone, and they can't put on the size that they would like. So why would you think, as a female, that lifting weights is gonna bulk you up? And that's just not the case. Have you had to deal with that with people before, coaching and everything? Lifting weights?
Like almost every woman, right? And I think that it's a vestige of the bodybuilding days, right? When the gyms were all about the bodybuilding style weightlifting, because in those days, the training and the programming, and there's still people out there that train like this, right? The goal of that was to make you bulky, right? So it's like, well, of course you're going to get bulky because that's the whole goal, right?
That was the intent of the training program.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like that's what the whole idea of bodybuilding. That's what fucking bodybuilding means. Building your body, right? Like I can't make it more straightforward than that. So I think that when women especially think about weightlifting, that's what they think about, is this bodybuilding, high volume, high rep, low weight, that type of style.
Yeah. So that was what I was going to say. Just so to break down the really basic, the science of it is that doing sets of 10 reps or 15s tends to promote hypertrophy, which is actually the building of larger muscles, up to about 20 or 30 reps, right? So 10 to 30 reps is considered hypertrophy, and you would lift a load that, maybe 15 reps where you do 3 sets of 15, and 15 is hard, right? So you use a challenging load. That's going to send a signal to your body to build larger muscles. Doing below 10, especially doing 1s, 2s, up to about 5s, that's sending the signal to the body to get stronger, but not necessarily build the biggest muscle it can. And so you'll notice that a lot of my programming, we do a lot of 2s and 3s, and that's developing muscle fiber recruitment, which is different than hypertrophy in the growth. Now, we are going to see some muscle growth in the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and we are going to see some strength development in the 15s and up, but those are the most extreme. Those are the two extremes. And I like to my programming is to put on functional muscle. Like realistically, like how I don't want to put on a lot of exercise. I want to put on muscle that I can use to go out and do things outside of the gym, whether that's, lifting something heavy at my house, or, going and being able to be strong enough to get pulled up behind a boat, and that type of thing. So I don't want to have a bunch of extra bulk that I can't use outside of the gym. But if you guys are doing Thrive Street programming, you'll notice that there is an extra credit sort of thing. It's the cash out. It says cash out or hypertrophy. So on certain days, I will program, 3 sets of 15 of, dumbbell curls and, split squats. Right.
Is that
so,
like on Friday? So
yeah.
you
It's
curls for the girls on Fridays?
No, it's actually programmed in, so it depends on the movement. But it's designed to be more for hypertrophy, and it's an added on part of the programming if that's one of your goals. Because I'm not going to include that stuff in the main program, because again, from a general fitness standpoint, there are just better things we can invest our time in.
Yeah.
And so again, from a myth standpoint, you got to remember that, okay, so if you wanted to add size, you would need to be doing 3 sets of 15 or whatever, and then you also need to be eating significantly more protein to be able to synthesize that into your muscles. And most people don't eat enough protein to begin with, so you're not going to put on a lot of size just from touching the weights, right? And just keep in mind that like I said, the lifting that we're doing and the metcons we're doing are not designed primarily with size in mind. Again, it's all the other health benefits we're getting from those things. The size isn't the main goal of the main gym programming. It's general fitness. So there will be some muscle growth, but do not worry about adding a bunch of extra size to your body. Now, maybe you're doing the programming and you've noticed some of your muscles getting bigger and you're not happy with that. Maybe your legs are getting bigger or your shoulders are developing. And a lot of that's genetic, so some people, like, I've trained women who just tend to put on muscle on their shoulders, and they're a little bit self-conscious about that. And so they kind of pick their outfits, based upon their shoulders being big. But again, that is just genetically how you're built. And what was funny, I remember specifically one person, she was self-conscious at first, but then she kept getting compliments. The other women were always like, "What do you do? Your arms look amazing." And she kind of felt like she had manly arms. And it was like, and after a while she realized, like, no, wait a minute, like that's just in my own head. And actually people thought it was cool. Like they were like, where are you training? Or like, what are you doing? How do you make your arms look like that? Or the other one with women who do the style training, it's their traps. Right? You start to get bigger traps because of all the cleans and all the snatches and the kettlebell swings. We tend to see this muscle right here, develop. And that's something that they start to feel a little self-conscious about. But it's like normal people don't notice that, only other people who train. Like, no one's like, man, she's got a thick neck. Like it's like you're getting in your own head about that. But ultimately, if bulk is something you're worried about and you're trying to lose weight, you have to ask yourself, well, why do I need to lose, quote, weight? Most women have this concept of, they have a weight in mind that I will look good at this number. And that number has very little to do with how you actually look, right? So, this whole 1 pound of muscle weighs about the same, or is 5 pounds of fat is the same size as 1 pound of muscle, approximately. Everybody's a little bit different. And so you could literally lose 5 pounds of fat and put on just 1 pound of muscle, and you will look different, but the scale will stay basically the same thing. And you will be in your head and be like, oh, I'm not making any progress. Like, I'm not losing weight, like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wait, how are your jeans fitting? Right? Like, oh, well, yeah, my waist is smaller and all that. But the scale, like, fuck the scale lies. Like, your weight only matters if you're a horse jockey or an MMA fighter, right? There's weight classes. Like, like you are like, I always would make this joke when someone would say something about weight, and I would be like, are your shoes like rated for a certain weight? Are you worried about wearing out your shoes too fast? Because what does your weight matter, right? Ultimately, you need to disconnect the number on the scale to how you look, right? Like those are
Well, to how you feel ultimately.
yeah. Well, and like I said, for people who usually have the number in mind, like, oh, I want to be 125. Like I hear that from women sometimes, and it's like, okay, why do you want that? Well, I've never been that light, and I think I'll look good at that weight. And it's like, well, so the goal is to change your body, and how you look. And so it's like, yeah, okay, so let's not worry about the scale. That is sort of again, it is a correlated slightly, but ultimately we want to focus on that aesthetic goal, and so there are things we can do to change that, through training and nutrition. But again, the ultimate goal is not to change the scale. If you want to lose 20 pounds, I can take you out back, and it'll take about 15 minutes, and I'll cut your leg off at the knee. You will never gain that weight back. and that, that's it, right? Like, if what is your goal here? And ultimately, that's a whole nother discussion when it comes to eating a tiny amount of food and working out really hard. You're just destroying muscle. That's like cutting your own leg off, right? It ultimately slows your metabolism down and makes it harder to burn fat and everything. So, what you really want to do, if you're worried about bulking up, is make sure you're dialing in your nutrition, and then you can make sure that you're losing body fat while maintaining muscle, because ultimately we do want to put more muscle on. We do want to have as much functional muscle as possible, because that burns more calories, especially at rest, right?
Well, I think more so for women, and I was hoping that this conversation would go there, is the importance of having more muscle mass. Like, most women do not have enough, and your hormones are all out of whack because of it. And like, you need muscle mass to basically help with the estrogen and testosterone levels, right? And like making sure that your ratios are good. And for a lot of women, because they're afraid of getting bulky, they end up way too low, and then their hormones and their cycles and like everything is all out of fucking whack, just because they don't have enough muscle mass, let alone too much. Like and you kind of touched on this before when you said, if it's not the main goal of your program, in order to get to the point where you would be bulky, it would have to be your main goal. And basically, just by saying, I don't want that to be my goal, it'll never happen. But all of these other things will happen. Your joints will be healthier, your cycles will be better, your hormones will be better balanced. You won't have hunger issues or strength problems. Like, you can carry your kids up the stairs 2 at a time if you need to, which I do like every fucking day. They're so lazy. But it's like the benefits of having muscle mass far outweigh any kind of risk that you might get too bulky, right? Like, it's such a low chance that you're going to be genetically one of those oddballs that like has this.
And if you are, you should embrace it.
Because
right?
You're so healthy. You have this amazing, like, healthy body that can do these things that women need, right?
Yeah. And ultimately, like I said, for most women, the concern is body fat, and the more muscle you have, the less body fat you're going to have, and the easier it is to maintain a healthy diet, because you can eat more yummy things, and your body will burn it, right? So muscle burns more calories at rest than fat does, obviously. And so I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's like for every pound of muscle you have, you burn 50 more calories per day, just over a 24-hour period, just at rest. So not including the exercise. So again, going back to that scenario where you lost 5 pounds of fat and you gained 1 pound of muscle, you're in order to stay the same weight, you have to eat an additional 50 calories. So let's say you lost 10 pounds of fat and gained 2 pounds of muscle. The scale says exactly the same thing, but now you need to eat 100 more calories per day to maintain that muscle mass.
Get to eat 100 more
calories. I know, right? You get to eat. If you don't eat it, you're going to continue to lose weight, right? Like, and so and like I said, and that's just like sitting around the house sleeping, like you burn that at rest. And so we want to add, the muscle we can add is a good thing. And you don't need to worry about the size, because remember, it's about 1 to 5. So again, if this one finger was a pound of muscle, then your 5 fingers would be the fat. So you can imagine there's a big difference there, Yeah.
A
So
weird analogy, dude. That's
yeah, and so again, you can if you can remove that fat and add that muscle. Now, there's been some research that says that's kind of it varies a lot more than that and everything. But it's just an example to say, okay, don't be afraid of putting on too much muscle. In fact, we want to put on as much muscle as we can, and it won't change. You won't look any bigger, guarantee it. Like you could, again, most women could put on 5 or 10 pounds of muscle, and if they lost an equal amount of fat, and so the scale was about the same, they would look completely. You would be totally leaned out and look completely different, right? And that's another thing too. Is sometimes when the muscles do change according to the training, it looks different. So somebody who has is a little bit more muscular, you look better. So even though the scale says something different and your clothes fit a little bit different because of the extra muscle, it's a good look. It looks healthy, right? Versus the fat, right? So, and one thing I'll kind of wrap this up with is that you're never actually going to be happy with how you look. There's always going to be something that you want to change or could be better. And I have trained plenty of women that look like models, right? And they could walk onto a figure competitor stage without doing any bodybuilding or any weight cutting like that. They could walk on and do great because they just have the muscle definition and they've leaned themselves out and their nutrition's dialed in and they train really hard or whatever. And they still have things they complain about. And they still wish they had this different. I have this little bit of fat right here. And it's like, there's veins below at your waistline on your abs, like, and you're worried about body fat, like, come on, like, no matter what, there's always, if you start trying to say, oh, I just need to lose 10 pounds, it's like, okay, well, that's a side effect of doing everything else healthy, but that shouldn't be the goal, right?
yeah.
And because ultimately you could lose that 10 pounds and you still won't necessarily totally be satisfied. So that's why you want to pursue health and fitness, and then looking good is a side effect of being healthy, right? And so if you act healthy and you do healthy things in the gym and you eat healthy, you're going to end up looking good. And so instead of sort of getting this number in your head or worrying about putting on weight or bulking up from lifting weights, pursue the healthy habits that you can then reap the rewards from.
I will also say, if you want to look at lifestyle, do you want to have the kind of life where you wake up at 5 a.m., you run 10K fasted cardio, you have 3 shots of espresso and a protein bar for lunch, and then you have half of a chicken breast and some broccoli for dinner, and you pass out because you're so exhausted and you have no patience left for your kids or your loved ones or anything like that? Or do you want to lift weights 3 times a week and basically eat like a lot? Like, what do you want to do, right? Like, do you want to live your life or do you want to be a slave to fucking cardio and diets all the time, right? Like it's a pretty obvious choice when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and there will be people listening to this podcast that they really want that super lean, aesthetic or whatever for whatever reasons. But again, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to, what are you willing to do to get that? And you can do the programming and then add on other things if you like to run because it's good for your head and you like, you have other, that's fine. But again, it's not running or doing that extra cardio isn't actually going to lean you out like you think it is. It's a really,
yourself, right? Like, if it's for your mental health, go run as much as you fucking want. Just make sure you're doing enough like prehab that you're not going to injure yourself while all you're doing is running, right? So you still need to do some squats and some lunges and stuff like that. But anyway, we're running on time here, so we should wrap this up.
Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and smash that like button and subscribe button if you are catching this on YouTube, and send us your questions, and we want to make sure we cover them. So if you have anything that you want us to go over, any myths, or especially if you're a coach and you're trying to figure out how to answer this question, succinctly so people get it, I love to cover those topics. So definitely send them our way. And thanks again, guys. Thanks, Gigi, for the podcast.
Bye.